So in this video, we're going to talk about solving proportions. And so the first thing is to actually understand what a proportion is. So a proportion is generally two fractions that are equal. Oops, didn't write that right. Two fractions, oh, now I still got the eraser. Okay, two fractions that are equal. And I like to think of it kind of like if you were doing a recipe, right? So like if in a recipe you needed 2 cups of flour for every 1 cup of sugar, if I doubled that recipe, I would then need 4 cups of flour and 2 cups of sugar. So that proportion, that ratio of flour to sugar stays the same between both things. So the way we could write that mathematically is to say, oh, 2 over 1, that's the same as 4 over 2. And so we're going to use this to help us try to solve the proportions where we're missing one of the numbers in the fractions. So for example, solve. So the first one we're going to look at here is 13 over 3 equals x over 8. So there's a couple ways you could go about solving a proportion. So the first thing we could do is we could notice that right now our denominators here are different. So if our denominators were the same, then what we could do is we could just compare the tops. So if I think about 3 and 8, a common denominator between 3 and 8 would be 24. So if we think about these two bottoms here being 24, and if you think about what had to happen to get from 3 to 24, I had to multiply by 8, right? So to go from here to here, I multiplied by 8, which means I need to multiply the top number, the 13, also by 8. So on the top here, I'd have 13 times 8. And then to go from 8 to 24, I multiplied by 3, so I have to do the same thing on the top. So I'm going to have 3 times x. And so I haven't really changed anything yet. I've just rewritten my fractions. And so because of that, now that the bottoms are the same, I can just pull off this top part. So really what we're trying to solve is that 13 times 8 equals 3x. Now, a lot of people don't like fractions. And so in general, in these problems, I don't have to do this middle, let me use my pointer. I don't have to do this middle step because if you notice 13 times 8 and 3 times x, it just came from cross multiplying. So when you have a proportion, really the easier way to get here is to cross multiply. And so that's usually how we're going to solve these problems. So I'm going to start this problem all over again and show you how easy it is to cross multiply to solve it. So we have 13 thirds equals x over 8. And so what we're going to do is we're going to cross these two here. So we're going to get 13 times 8 equals 3x. And you'll notice that's exactly what I have over here. So I'm going to finish solving it in this case. So the first thing I need to do is I need to multiply 13 times 8. If you do that, you get 104 equals 3x. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 3 to get the x all by itself. So x is going to be 108 divided by 3. You can't simplify anymore, so it's just going to stay as 104 divided by 3. If you wanted to, you could change it into a decimal. If Alex asked you, or the problem directions said write your answer as a decimal, and it would tell you what to round to. But if it doesn't say to convert to a decimal, we're just going to leave it as a fraction here. So let's try another one. We'll go here to a clean page. So maybe 9 over x equals 13 over 8. So again, I have one fraction equals another fraction, which means I can do this cross multiply. And so if I do that, I end up with 9 times 8 equals 13x. 9 times 8 is 72. So 72 is equal to 13x. We're going to divide both sides by 13. So x is going to be equal to 72 over 13. So again, that would be my answer unless the problem said to round your answers to the nearest tenth. So if I rounded to the nearest tenth, so 72 divided by 13, if I actually divide that out, x is going to be 5.53846 ... keep going. And so if we're rounding to the nearest tenth, this is the tenths place. The number before the 10 is a 3, which means I'm going to round down. So in that case, my answer here would be x equals 5.5. But again, you only have to do this part here if the problem said to round. Otherwise, if the problem doesn't mention rounding, you just want to stop right here.